Welcome back to The Explainer. So if you caught our previous analyses, you know we've been deep in the data. We've looked at the popularity and ranking metrics of 24 major institutions across Taiwan. We're talking everyone from elite national powerhouses like NTU, NCCU, NYCU, and NCKU, all the way to specialized medical universities and mid-tier private schools. Well, today we're putting the microscope entirely on Providence University, also widely known as静宜University. We're going to see exactly where静宜stacks up against those 24 other institutions. And look, we're not going to sugarcoat the numbers today. If there's a lag, if they're falling behind, we are going to point it out directly. Because let's be real, pretending a problem doesn't exist is the fastest way to make sure it never gets solved. All right, let's dive right into this reality check.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to quickly break down our popularity metric, check out静宜macro reality, and then audit literally every single department group from law to STEM before figuring out what variables are actually driving these trends.
The popularity metric explained.
Before we look at the school, we got to understand the ruler we're measuring it with. Our methodology uses a very specific popularity metric. How do we get it? Well, we take the comprehensive fill rate, which is just the percentage of students who actually want the department and officially list it, and we multiply that by the square root of the inverse of the admission order rank. Sound like a mouthful? Basically, it strips away all the statistical noise. It perfectly balances pure student desire against how hard it actually is to get accepted. A lower rank number means higher difficulty. You really can't fix a problem if you aren't measuring it accurately, right?
Moving to Section 2,静宜macro reality.
Keeping that metric in the back of your mind, let's zoom out. What does静宜overall positioning look like from 30,000 feet? Honestly, it's a brutal reality. When we look at the average admission order rank over recent years,静宜has been hovering way out in the 70 to 80,000 rank range. In 2024 specifically, they were sitting at 73,922. To put that into perspective, a mid-tier private school like Fengqia University is sitting pretty at 44,480. That is a massive gap.静宜is severely lagging behind its regional mid-tier rivals. Right now, they're essentially fighting for relevance right next to Chinese Culture University, which is at 71,673. This is a huge wake-up call for their overall brand appeal.
Section 3. Law, Humanities, and Social Work. Okay, remember, we are strictly comparing apples to apples here. Similar departments against similar departments. So let's look at law. Law is actually静宜best internal performer with a rank of 670. But when you put it head-to-head against similar programs, the gap is just glaring. They're trailing way behind Soochow at 181, NCKU at 58, and they're even getting edged out slightly by Culture University at 662. We see that exact same undeniable gap in social work and child welfare, where静宜is sitting at 803. They are just vastly outpaced by Tunghai at 616, Soochow at 660, and obviously NTU at 177. Now, historically, foreign language departments were the bread and butter for private universities. They were strongholds, but for静宜, those strengths are completely evaporating. Across the entire board, from Japanese to Taiwan literature, ranks are plummeting down into the 700s, 800s, and 900s. Take a look at Japanese.静宜is at 762, which is just completely eclipsed by Soochow at 520 and NCCU at 133. Even their super niche Spanish program falls behind Tamkang. And Chinese and English? They're trailing significantly behind Tunghai and Tamkang. The trend is universal here. Every single one of these humanities departments is struggling just to maintain a foothold.
Let's hit Section 4, STEM, Business, and Specialty Departments.
Okay, the crucial takeaway here is what looks like a really flawed tech strategy from静宜. Sure, their applied chemistry and standard computer science programs are lagging behind rivals like Chung Yuan and Feng Cha, but the real disaster? It's in their newly created tech micro departments. They've decided to heavily segment their programs into hyper-specific groups, things like data science, chip design, an info management AI group, and AI applied info security. By slicing the pie so thin,静宜has actually pushed those specific rankings past the 1,000 mark. It's literally over 1,000. Students are just spreading their choices way too thin, and it's causing静宜to fall drastically behind the established unified programs at rival schools.
And it doesn't get much better in management and tourism. The competitive advantage here is virtually non-existent.静宜is trying really hard to pull students away from legacy private schools, but they are universally stuck in the high 800s and 900s. Whether it's finance and financial engineering trailing Tamkang, marketing heavily lagging behind NCHU, or international business and accounting just struggling to get any traction at all,
The data clearly shows they are locked in a dead heat with lower-tier rivals like Culture University instead of climbing up the ranks.
You think they'd make up ground in their traditional specialties, right? The livelihood sciences. But even here,静宜is losing the head-to-head battles. Cosmetic science, food and nutrition, and their specialized biotech group are all being vastly outpaced by medical-focused universities like KMU and TMU. When you stack them up against these highly specialized schools,静宜programs simply don't carry the necessary prestige for today's applicants.
Section 5. Variables driving the trends.
All right, we've seen the data and we've audited every single department group. So, what is actively causing this systemic lag? Let's check out the external variables on this timeline. Back in 2022, Taiwan introduced a new syllabus. Because everyone was so uncertain about it, high-scoring students played it safe and filled down their preference lists. This actually gave静宜an artificial temporary boost in the rankings. Then, fast forward across 2023 and 2024, we saw a massive rise in cross-disciplinary exam taking. On paper, this inflated the applicant pools, but it seriously diluted the actual intent to enroll. And finally, in 2024, the government rolled out a 35,000 NTD tuition subsidy for private schools. But as the data brilliantly illustrates, that financial subsidy wasn't nearly enough to overcome the geographic and brand appeal of静宜rivals. Students still prioritize schools in Taipei or legacy brands like逢甲, despite the extra financial help.
But we can't just blame external factors. What is静宜doing internally? Well, they did make one really smart move. They successfully canceled the pseudo-star admission system. That old system used to accidentally punish top students because of random preference filling, and axing it actually helped stabilize their law department rankings. But their tech strategy, completely backfiring. That frantic rush we talked about, creating all those heavily fragmented AI and cybersecurity micro-departments, has severely diluted their brand trust. Instead of building one massive, reputable computer science program, they've ended up with 5 weak ones. They diluted the applicant focus, and ultimately they completely failed to retain that fill-down talent dividend it stumbled into back in 2022.
Section 6. The future of静宜. As we wrap up this explainer, the data leaves us with a really provocative question. We've compared静宜against 24 of its peers and looked at the unvarnished truth across literally every department. In an era of a demographic winter, with shrinking student populations across all of Taiwan, can universities actually survive by constantly fragmenting into trendy, AI-branded micro-departments? Or do they need to aggressively consolidate and rebuild their core brand trust? Ignoring this fragmentation problem is only going to accelerate静宜shrinking footprint. It's a tough reality, but hey, the numbers don't lie. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep asking the hard questions about the data.